Most people are probably aware that Australia's political system can be extremely strange at times, with traditions such as the Speaker of the House of Reps being dragged to his chair, the fact that Parliament cannot sit without the mace being present, and the usher of the black rod who hits this door. Well, regardless of these traditions, Australia's politics runs much deeper and much weirder, especially in how some of our electorates are arranged. So, in today's video, we're going to be looking at some of Australia's weirdest electorates, looking at some geographically weird, politically weird, and even at one electorate with a potential loophole in the constitution that we've discovered. Let's start off with Durack, located in Western Australia, measuring at 1.4 million square kilometres. It stretches all the way along the coast from Gilderton to the Northern Territory border. It is by far Australia's largest electorate. So large, in fact, that it's greater than the size of Tasmania, Victoria, New South Wales, and the ACT combined, with room left over. When assigning electoral boundaries, the nation's Electoral Commission, the AEC, aims to have roughly 100 to 110,000 people per electorate. But this leads to some electorates in the country being unusually small, with the division of Grayndler ranking the smallest at 34 square kilometres. On the other hand, the division of Durack and other large electorates are so sparsely populated that the AEC has no real choice but to create a large boundary, one that's larger than most states. This creates significant issues for campaigning and travel for politicians, with electorates such as Maranoa having up to 4 electorate officers for their MP David Littleproud. While this might seem like an easy fix, constitutional rules bar multi-state electorates. Geography and population constraints make this the only real option. And the issues don't stop there. Electorates such as Maranoa and Durack often see uneven population distribution within their own states. You've been lied to pretty much, because in reality, most electorates don't actually have 100,000 people in them. This leads to wild cases like Tasmania, where their electorates average only around 75,000 people, while being sparsely populated. Queensland, on the other hand, sees electorates with over 140,000 people, well above the target. What adds to the strangeness, though, are these so-called non-contiguous boundaries, and while these are not rare by any means, they are uncommon. The most notable example of these being the division of Bean, Fenner, and Lingiari. Bean, for example, is essentially all of the southern ACT, while also including the Norfolk Islands of all places, an astonishing 2,000 kilometres away. But why is this the case? Well, the first reason is that the island alone is way too small to be its own electorate, with only 2,000 people living there. The second is that it would also have to be its own state or internal self-governing territory to have an electorate in the first place, something which the federal government and basically every other Australian state would not want at all. This leaves a situation where a small but sizable number of people could go unrepresented. So the easiest option for the government was to include the island to be part of federal territory. What makes this case even stranger, though, is that Norfolk Island isn't subject to the laws of the ACT, but rather a combination of their own laws, New South Wales and Queensland, despite being represented by the ACT while being subject to their own court. What's even crazier is that it used to have its own parliament, making it essentially equivalent to that of the Northern Territory and ACT, but without Senate representation. However, all of those rights were revoked in 2016, where it is now represented by a local council commissioned by New South Wales. While it might seem to be much simpler to just tag the island with the random New South Wales electorates, the Constitution prevents such things due to it being an external federal territory. Anyway, similar trends can be observed for Christmas and the Keeling Islands, which are part of the division of Lingiari. The other notable case is that of the division of Fenner in the northern ACT, which also represents the Jervis Bay Territory, a populated jurisdiction on the Australian mainland without self-governance. Despite many New South Wales electorates literally being next door, it is a federal territory, which means it's represented by the ACT, with ACT local laws applying as much as possible, which is quite strange, as the same is not true for the Norfolk Islands. The division of Sydney is also a weird one, as it also includes the Lord Howe Islands, but instead of being an external territory, it's controlled by New South Wales. It has around 200 people, but despite its small population and distance, it does have its own polling station. As for the other external territories, well, they don't see much representation at all because they're unorganized and have no permanent populations. However, none of this really compares to the most strange, potentially constitutionally breaking electorate. So, Tasmania has 5 electorates. 3 of them are non contiguous: Bass, Braddon, and Franklin. However, the most interesting of the 3 is Franklin, where it's the only electorate where a non contiguous boundary is separated by another electorate and the sea. However, what's more interesting is that the division also includes Macquarie Island, which, rather than being administered as an external territory by the Commonwealth, is under the full jurisdiction of Tasmania. The island, with a population of 40 scientists and an area of 128 square kilometres, is 1,500 kilometres away from Tasmania. But because it's part of the state, it has to be represented. So it's part of the division of Franklin and managed by the Huon Valley Council, which is kind of strange. This makes it the only place in Australia that is geographically non contiguous and remote, as well as being fully integrated into a state and local government structure. However, things get even weirder. The scientists in federal elections are treated as special remote voters, which permits their vote to be counted way later and through different means. However, this same privilege is only limited to the Commonwealth. We've discovered that if theoretically a scientist there happens to be Tasmanian and registered on the Franklin electoral roll, and a snap election was called for Tasmania, then they could theoretically go unrepresented because there is no polling station there, and postal ballots would arrive months after the election due to resupply ships only travelling once or twice a year, way more than the allowed 7 days after an election. No other Australian region has this combination of formal inclusion in electorate while being basically unrepresented, which in theory could break the Tasmanian Constitution and bylaws of the Huon Valley Council. However, considering such the minuscule population and practical realities, how this would hold up in court is anyone's guess. If we look at the most politically weird seat in Australia, it's unironically another Tasmanian electorate, that being the division of Bass. Not only does it share a non contiguous boundary with the Flinders Islands, but it's also Australia's most volatile electorate. It's often referred to as the ejector seat because since 1988, the electorate has changed hands at least 8 times and has produced huge swings from either party. It's often the electorate that determines national sentiment and is used by political analysts as a key seat during elections. What makes this place even more unique is that it has the shortest border of any electorate. While some might think that we're crazy or believe that one of Sydney's electorates has the shortest border, it's actually a small place called Border Islet, which sees one half of the island in Victoria and the other half in Tasmania, with the border measuring only 85 metres long. It's also probably the electorate with the most islands, which includes Flinders, Cape Barren, and 100 other Phoenix Group islands. However, despite these wacky and weird electorates, most of them are unlikely to change for the foreseeable future. So for now, they will remain weird, but unique in Australia's political system. The news can often feel overwhelming at times, and it's often difficult to understand with inherent biases. That's why we've started our magazine, Snapshots, which aims to make the news accessible to all. We all know a good story when we see one, which is why we've designed our magazine around a monthly theme, so you're able to get a bigger picture of things without feeling overwhelmed. You can check out our link down below to find out more with the discount code SNAP20. Thank you for watching this video. If you've enjoyed our explainer on some of Australia's weirdest electorates, be sure to subscribe and to check out our other content. I'd also like to thank our TDMG Press Club members on the screen here, who are, as always, is key to ensuring we're able to provide quality content. If you're interested in being part of a fast-growing community, or if you just want to help out a small indie outlet, be sure to join Press Club, where you can gain access to unique benefits. Lastly, I'd like to thank the rest of our team behind this video, and others. Once again, I'm Heath. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.